Purpose is not some glorious mountaintop experience. I found my purpose in the depths of unimaginable pain. Maybe you're going through some pain right now, or you've been through some pain, and you were trying to find purpose in your life or purpose in that situation. Purpose is a deep, complex word, and we are going to kind of break that down and help you learn what purpose is for you and maybe what purpose is in that painful situation. I'm Dr. B. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner with over 20 years of clinical experience, but my real experience comes from my pain. I have lost 3 children and my husband. I have been through 10 years of medical trauma with my son, raised 7 children. And so I understand pain. I understand disappointment. I understand grief. I understand trauma. So whatever your pain is, I want to encourage you that we can find purpose. So how do we do that? Sometimes purpose is a trigger word, right? Like if you're going through a really hard time and someone says, oh, there's purpose in this, or God has a plan for this, or that might actually be a trigger word for you. And it has been many times in my life. As my son, Reggie, had this 10 years of medical trauma, I truly believe that if I thought positive and I found purpose, that I could be that hero story, that I could have the miracle story, that my son would be healed and I would be able to shout on the mountaintops. But he passed away, and then my daughter passed away, and then my husband passed away. So bad thing after bad thing after bad thing, even though I had this tragic optimism. And so optimism, thinking positive, is not the only key to finding happiness and joy and hope. Purpose is also part of that equation. So there's 2 things that I'm going to talk about: acknowledging the pain and defining purpose. Now, I would love for you to learn more about me and my story and what I do. I have a documentary, books, courses, programs. Click the link below to find out more about how I can help you on your journey. As today, we talk about purpose. So what do I mean when I say acknowledging the pain? Oftentimes, the word purpose is used in a spiritual context. Finding your purpose in God. I've heard it in the church and in spiritual conversations, right? Like purpose is a bigger plan above what you are in reality, right? And I do believe that that is true. But often what I see happen is that people use grit, and they think that resilience and mental strength is just pushing through. I want you to take a moment and acknowledge the pain. Maybe you're going through a divorce and you can't find the purpose in that. Like this is not what you chose. This is not what you wanted. Obviously, the same is true in losing my children. It's not what I wanted. It's not what I prayed for. Regardless of the pain in which you are experiencing, I want you to take a moment and acknowledge it. And I do that through the Mentally Strong method, which is identifying and organizing that pain. Oftentimes we use pain or sadness, depression, anxiety, and it's this big clump of feelings. And when I say acknowledging the pain using the Mentally Strong method, I'm talking about identifying and organizing it. What part of your pain is grief? Grief is the loss of something. So divorce is grief, loss of a job is grief. But there's more to it oftentimes. In my situation of losing children, there was trauma. And maybe there's trauma in your divorce. Maybe there's a lot of negative self-talk. Maybe there's betrayal. That's a different kind of pain. And I want you to organize those things, list those things. And we put them into categories so that we do different things for the different types of pain. But finding your purpose is such a deep, complex question and unique to you. And if you're watching this video, you're going through something that you did not choose, you did not want, and it is painful. And sometimes there's a specific purpose in that pain, but sometimes there's not. And so when someone tells you, oh, well, God has a plan, there's a purpose in this, you might not be able to find that, very specific purpose. And maybe that's painful, right? But we will all, every single one of us, go through hardships and pains and difficulties. And maybe the purpose is growth. Maybe the purpose is just what you learn about yourself in this process. So if you do the Mentally Strong method in acknowledging this pain, you will be able to identify the grief, identify the trauma, identify the anxiety, identify the negative self-talk. And I'm going to talk about this for a moment. As you are acknowledging pain, we often think of external, like these things are happening to me. The only thing we have control of is our reaction, our personal growth, and very specifically, the way in which we talk to ourselves. If you are speaking words to yourself of guilt and anger and disappointed with yourself and you're not good enough, whatever your negative internal dialogue is, I can assure you that is not your purpose. So when you are acknowledging your pain, and I challenge you or encourage you to work through some of that pain, but the one thing you have ultimate control over is how you speak to yourself. So in acknowledging that pain, I want you to find kind words, gratitude words, self-love words. Not just what you say out loud, but what you say in here to you. So acknowledging this pain is honestly bigger than just acknowledging it, right? And I encourage you to go on that journey of acknowledging and working through some of those things. But today we're talking about purpose. So how do we define purpose? Remember I said acknowledge the pain and then define purpose. Purpose is a complex word, and I said for some it's a triggering word, but try to push past the trigger. Can you, because your purpose is internal. It's not what your family thinks your purpose is. It's not what your colleagues think your purpose is. It's not what you think or the pastors of your church have said your purpose is. It is a deeply personal, spiritual question. Spiritual question. We often avoid spiritual conversations in mental health topics, but your purpose is a spiritual question. It is uniquely yours. It can only be found within yourself, in relationship, in a spiritual relationship. And so I want to take a moment in how do you define that? For me, it started with spiritual conflict. So I am a born-again Christian. I had a very conversion-like experience where I felt like I now have a relationship with God. And during that time, I prayed for healing for my children. I prayed for safety for my children. And I prayed for, acknowledgement of my purpose. And when Reggie died, and then when Maya died, that was shattered. I call it a spiritual conflict. So maybe defining your purpose is first defining your spiritual conflict. Or maybe you're saying, I don't have a spiritual relationship. I don't know if I believe in God. There's something out there, but I've never taken the time to try to decide what I believe because I get so much conflicting information. The first step in defining your purpose is to know who you are. Who are you? And this is a question that we don't ask ourselves. Who are you? And when we ask somebody that, or when we ask ourselves that, we begin to list roles in which we play. I am a mother. I am a grandmother. I am a nurse practitioner. No. Those are roles in which you play. Those are roles in which you've chosen to exhibit or manifest who you are. And so when I start to look at that, when I start to evaluate, I go back, what's the first job I chose? I went into the Army and I chose to be a medic. From a medic, I chose to be a nurse. I worked in ER. I adopted children. And then I realized Christy is a caretaker. That is part of who I am. And yes, it gets manifested in the roles that I play, but go deeper than just the roles that you play. Who are you? I am a caretaker. Who are you? And as you evaluate who am I, what do I truly like? And again, you start to list things that you do that make you happy. That's part of it. But go deeper. Why do you like those things? I'm an extrovert. I like talking to people and I like helping people, right? I'm a caregiver and I'm an extrovert. And as I evaluate that more, I like to contribute. I like to connect with people. So connection is part of who I am. So as you ask this question of who am I, then you can begin to create purpose, right? Oftentimes when people look at me, they're like, oh yes, I can see purpose in your pain because you're helping other people from a large scale. It doesn't have to be a large scale. I'm a caregiver, right? So that's part of who I am. So that does become part of my purpose. I like to contribute. So I'm building something to help people. But maybe that's not who you are. So when you are trying to evaluate your purpose, remember what I said about negative self-talk. Go away from that. Speak in self-love. Who are you? Figure out who you are. And that can drive the purpose. I can go even deeper. And this is a trigger, especially if you're watching and you've lost children and you cannot imagine finding purpose in this pain. I have found a greater spiritual purpose. I can communicate with my children in their passing and in their eternity. I have an eternal relationship with them. I have been opened, my heart and my mind has been open to a spiritual vastness that I never would have experienced had I had the hero story or the miracle story. I would have thanked God for giving me this miracle story and I would have lived it out and shouted it from the rooftop. But in my pain of losing them, I wrestled with God and I have a bigger spiritual understanding than I ever would have. And so whether you are going through divorce, loss, just overwhelming hardship in life, you are the only thing that you can control. Your purpose is within you, and it has to do with growth. And it is a spiritual question. I hope you go on that journey. I hope you are encouraged. I had a few questions. The first question was, I really struggle with my purpose because I was never able to have children. And that was the vast of the question. And I would stop to ask you, why did you think that having children was the only purpose? Right? Like, that is clearly a grief, right? I've lost children. And I bet part of you thinks, well, at least you had children to love. Absolutely. I cherish the time I had with my children. The fact that you were not able to have children is a grief. And I want you to acknowledge that grief. And then I want you to define purpose. Because that is a role that I was able to play, and you were not able to play that role. But I encourage you to redefine purpose, because your purpose is within you, and it's obviously not in the role of mother, right? Those are the roles we play. What part of you really wanted to be a mother? Because you care for people? Are you a caregiver? Do you love children? Do you see the innocence and the growth potential of those little souls? What is it that made being a mother your defining purpose? Go deeper than the role of mother. And then as you define who you are and your purpose, then look for other ways to manifest that purpose. Second question, also about kids. I am a mother of 4 children, and my purpose is my children. That is your role, and that is your role for, 18 to 25 years. You will always be their mother, but that is, again, just a role. And I think in our culture, we often give our whole life, especially mothers, give our whole purpose and life and will to the raising of our children. And I have spoken to many mothers disappointed at that, end of that season of their life because they don't know who they are. They put everything into the role of being a mother. And it's a role, and it has a purpose, absolutely. But go deeper. The same with the woman who doesn't have children. Go deeper. What brings the fire of that? What about you? Who are you under that? And for me, it wasn't just the caretaking of children that was this underlying purpose for me. It was about connection, and children are such a close connection. But you see, as I did that deeper work, I was able to, now that I don't have children, right? My other children are grown. I have lost 3 children to death, and I can still find purpose because I went deeper than being a mother, and I know that my purpose is connection. Last question. There can't be purpose in bad and evil because God is good. And when we fight that, and we can go back to, wrestling with God, I encourage you to wrestle with God, because there is evil in this world. There are bad things. People in your life have made bad choices that are impacting you. Or maybe you've made bad choices that are impacting your environment and you. Oh, just sit in the reality of that. Look around. But what we focus on, we see more of. And so even though I do not ignore that there is evil and that there is bad, I choose to focus on God is good. Look at these good people. Look at the intent. Look at all of these people listening who are finding their purpose, digging deep. Who am I? Thank you for watching this. Thank yourself for going on this journey. If you are struggling, especially with struggling of the loss of a child, please go back and watch some of my videos. I do believe we can find purpose. Thank you.